I just helped runners improve their performance by stopping weight loss during a race prep and focusing on proper fueling. I'm Dr. Ray Peralta, physical therapist and run coach. In this video, I'm going to walk you through why trying to lose weight during a full marathon or a half marathon training is hurting your performance, and what to do instead to run faster, feel better, and stay injury free. So a big problem is that most runners think if I lose weight, I'll run faster. And let me be clear, this can be actually true to an extent, right? If you're overweight or you have excessive body fat, getting leaner, you can improve your running performance. But the thing is, it's a conflicting goal with while you're in a caloric deficit, while you're actively trying to lose weight, you shouldn't be trying to diet while you're training for a marathon or a half marathon, because there are two conflicting goals, right? The problem, they start to underfuel. You start having low energy, your energy crashes during your runs, slower paces, poor workouts. You may bonk or hit the wall bonkings when you have such low energy that you can't maintain the same pace while you're running. This typically happens to marathoners around like mile 20 or so, and to half marathoners around mile 8 or 10, roughly. It could vary a bit, but usually happens in the last third of the race, where you kind of hit the wall, you have low energy, slower paces. And then if you're really underfueling, you could actually put yourself at risk for bone stress injuries, right? Where you're not eating enough calories to support your training. And then unfortunately, it tends to happen more in women athletes, where if they're underfueling, throws off their body's naturally bone density, protective like hormones and whatnot, and then they're more at risk for bone stress fractures and things like that. And it can happen in male athletes as well, just to be clear. These two competing goals, right? Weight loss or fat loss, and then really trying to perform and complete a marathon or a half marathon. They're essentially two competing goals, right? So the result, you end up not really excelling at either. You get so results, or you're just doing a race and now you're just like slogging through because you don't have enough energy in your body just to sustain you to complete the race. And if you want a copy of this outline to learn more about running faster while staying pain-free, I'm sharing in my free school community for runners. Click the link in the description to join. So what to do instead, right? Prioritize performance during training blocks, right? Eat enough to support your runs, especially if you're actively, in a training block for a marathon or a half marathon. Let's say the race is like 2 or 3 months from now. Really think about fueling with carbs, especially for endurance. A high carb approach tends to be better for peak performance, right? Carbs is the primary fuel source, helps with the long runs, tempo runs, your recovery between workouts. And yeah, so there are different approaches, right? I understand not everyone likes to do high carb. Some people do low carb, right? They do low carb, high fat. That can work, right? But it's not the primary approach. Most people, I found that they do better with a high carb approach. But yes, there are some exceptions to the rule where some people do a low carb approach and still feel fine with their energy. Typically, men tend to do better with a low carb approach. I find that many women don't like the low carb approach. Now, can they do it? Sure, but I found many of them, when they do it, that their energy does negatively affect their hormones as well. But again, you still want to avoid extreme dieting. You still want to have enough calories to fuel your body's ability to run, especially if you're trying to do a low carb approach. Again, for most runners, I still recommend a high carb approach, right? Because if you're doing a low carb approach, it tends to lead to poor energy, slower time, you're not running as fast. And you want to pick the right season for fat loss, right? Maybe do it off season, or once you're no longer training for the race. You can still run, of course, but not actively training for a half marathon or a marathon. Or maybe you do it in the very beginning of a base building phase. If you're training for a marathon, but it's like 6 months away and you're like in base building, sure, you could do a little bit of fat loss from base building, but not during your peak month, like it's a month away from the race, whether for the marathon or half marathon prep. And I just want to give you a couple macro ratios into like counting calories right now. A balanced approach, which is you can have equal protein, carbs, and fats. A low fat approach, which is essentially a high carb, so your carbs are 50% or higher. Lower fats, and then some protein there. And then a low carb approach, which is where the carbs are really low, and then you have more fat, a higher fat. Right. So again, there's different approaches, but for most runners, I'm going to recommend the higher carb approach, or, getting 50 to 70% of your daily intake in carbohydrates to really fuel your runs. And another strategy for folks who still are adamant that, no, I must lose some excessive weight, you can do carb cycling. This is on days with minimal activity. You eat mostly protein, veggies, and healthy fats with minimal carbs, about 25, 50% of your usual carb intake. And then on days with more physical activity, like you're going on a long run or something, add more carbs to your baseline diet. So you're going about 150 to 175% of your usual carb intake. This is going to be based on your body weight, your physical activity levels, your macros. There's calculators out there. You could calculate what your caloric needs are, what your macros should be. And then cycling with workouts. There's another method where you just eat your carbs around your workouts. So, for example, post-workout meals, you'll have the high carbs, right? Starches, potatoes, grains, beans, lentils, bread, whatever, high carb foods you like to eat. You put it around your workout. You can even do pre-workout, post-workout meal with high carbs. And then outside of that workout window, usually outside let's say you're not having a workout that day, you have like anytime meals, essentially veggies, some lean protein, some healthy fats, right? So you could do this approach as well with carb cycling, where you have most of your carbs around your workouts or your runs. And then outside of that, you just have this anytime meal, right? But even on days when you're not training, at least one of your meals, right? Even on non-workout days, at least one of your meals should still have a little bit of carbs in there, because you want to be completely no carbs at all. Some people like to do breakfast, some people like to do dinner to have as the higher carb meal. So results, runners who I found who don't do extreme dieting, who embrace that it's okay in this season, even though they might be a bit overweight, that hey, it's okay to have some more carbs, doing it especially when they're training for a race like a half marathon or full marathon, and notice to have better energy during the runs, stronger workouts, faster race times, and less fatigue and fewer injuries, right? And they're more consistent with their training, right? They're not dropping off their training because they're like feeling so overly fatigued, or they just can't keep up. They don't have enough energy. So I currently have a few spots open for runners who want to run faster, stay injury free, train smarter without burning out. If you're curious, there's a link to apply in the description. First come, first serve. This is for private coaching. And in conclusion, lessons. You can't optimize fat loss and performance at the same time. They're really two competing goals, right? Fuel properly will lead to better running results. And I also want to put a caveat. It depends what's a bigger priority for you. Is it a bigger priority to finish the race, or is it a bigger priority to do weight loss? Because you could always just finish the race and just kind of jog through it, like just do it for fun and not make the race a big priority. It really depends on your priorities. Is it weight loss or finishing the race? Lesson 3, train in phases, right? Again, if you want to do both, you want to finish finish the race at a decent time, or you want to optimize for your race, do the race, but then do the weight loss or the fat loss outside of the race prep, right? And then you focus on performance during the training block. I hope you found this useful. Like, comment, or subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.